Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
You know, I just have to mention, I apologize for being a bit late today. We all go through life and have some experiences, embarrassing experiences, and one happened to me this morning. I know it's really cold, but my car was totally white with salt after traveling yesterday on the roads, and I backed it out of the garage. I said, I've got to run it through the car wash, which I do many times because I have a towel and wipe all the doors down. So I'm in the car wash, and I'm all done, and none of the doors open. I'm looking at my watch. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I waited and nothing happened. Oh, I got my phone. I'll call the station, 823-7730 Northside Plaza. Phone doesn't work in there either. It's in the building. Holy Moses, what do I do now? And I did find a little side door, which I really had to hit because that was frozen too, and got out of there. And then, and then to find the owner, and it was really something. It was almost a panic situation. So at least I knew they'd find me when the weather got warmer. People So with that, I'll call this Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting to order today on this Tuesday, January 21st. Please press your roll call buttons.
Roll call shows 24 members present, 3 members excused.
Jim is here. Oh. Is he? Push the wrong one. Gotta push it again. Push it again.
One more time. 25 members present, 2 members excused.
It's not off to a good start. Should we do it over?
With that story, it threw us right off.
It's a mulligan, isn't it, Gary? This meeting and all other meetings are open to the public. Proper notice have been posted and given to the press in accordance to the Wisconsin state statute, so the citizenry may be aware, time, place, and the agenda of this meeting. Please join me in a moment of silent meditation followed by the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we'd like approval of the agenda before us today.
One item on the agenda, line item number 11, resolutions.
Yes, I would like to refer that to planning and zoning, so there'll be no action taken on that today. So with that change, could I have a motion for the approval of the agenda? There's a motion by Mr. Zog. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Penny. Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
The minutes were in your packet. You all read them. Is there a motion for approval? There is a motion by Mr. Jonley, and a second by Mr. Peterson. Any questions on the minutes or discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Next item is the ad hoc study of the Farmland Committee and ad hoc capital improvement project updates. And I'd like to start off with Mr. Fedowitz. Oh, I'm sorry.
This past few months, we've been discussing possible changes at the Lakeview Manor to meet the needs of the times. And there's been quite a bit discussion, some questions that were not answered totally. So Board Chairman Keppen appointed an ad hoc committee. And the members of that committee were Supervisor Barrington, Craig, Federowitz, Morgan, and myself. Gary Barrington is chairman of the Lakeview Manor Board. Pat Craig and Dwayne Federowitz and myself are from the Finance Committee, and Don Morgan represents the city of Waupaca and the area around the Lakeview Manor. Lakeview Manor Board wanted us to consider what to do with the farm property. This morning we have a kind of a three-pronged report. First of all, Dwayne Federowitz will explain our decisions, and then next will come Heidi Dombrowski, our finance director. She will discuss the financing of the project. And then Melissa Drews will explain the plan. Advisors on this committee were Board Chairman Keppen, Lakeview Manor Administrator Melissa Drews. From the finance office from the Lakeview Manor will be Melissa Golke and Carrie Baxter Chris, along with our corporate counsel, Jeff Seward. There were many things discussed during our meetings. We met twice, on January 6th and January 13th for about 2 hours at each meeting. And many questions were brought forward and discussed. And now Dwayne Federowitz will explain our decision.
Thanks, Jim. In starting out, I guess I just want to make sure that you understand that this item is for information. There's no action to be taken today on this item. We want to keep you informed. It was maybe somewhat fortunate. I didn't realize I was going to be on this ad hoc committee, but it kind of tied it all together with the CIP committee, which I chair. So I just want to give a background what took place on this meeting. I think one of the questions that surfaced early on from some of the supervisors that sit in this room is what is the issue with the land owned by Waupaca County and what should we do with it? It did not take our committee very long, or even myself very long, to come to some conclusion on that, but I want to explain our conclusion. Out there at that site, there's approximately 160 acres of cropland, and then there's what they call wetland or marginal land. And if you look at that land situation out there, the cropland, those of you that are farmers realize that cropland, from a tax standpoint, I think there was some issue here that we should have this land on the tax roll. The cropland itself in the state of Wisconsin is under what they call a land use tax. That differs from any other type of tax that we have. It's based on the values of the crops, primarily corn. So if you're going to look at that land out there, and if you got approximately 160 acres of cropland out there, the amount of property taxes that somebody would pay on 160 acres is going to be probably just a little bit over $500. So it's really not a tax issue from the county standpoint or anybody else. The interesting thing is that when you look at this situation, the county has about a total of 330 acres of cropland, probably, with all the sites they have. Right now, most of this cropland is rented out with about 2 years left. And the parcel out there, I believe it's getting around $116 an acre, approximately, in that area. The going price of cropland over the years now has came up, and I believe most of this land has another year left. So 2015 probably would be the last year of the contract, or maybe 14. And I believe the cropland then would probably rise up to $160 an acre thereabouts. So the long and short is the land out there at Lakeview Manor in that area, that particular cropland is bringing in approximately $20,000. $20,000. And so if you look at the $20,000 versus the $500 that would be taxes on there, I don't think it makes much of a financial impact to anybody who would want to own it and put it on the tax roll. I looked at the example this way. I think I picked on Mary Kay. If Mary Kay had 20 acres of land and she had a nice house out there, let's say for $250,000, and now her and her husband wanted to put up a $40,000 shed, what are they going to do? Are they going to sell 10 acres off to get some money to pay for that shed? No, Mary Kay said they would probably either not buy it or build a shed, or they would go out and borrow the money. So to sell an asset in this case is not, in my mind, from a financial standpoint and my banking background, would not be a good idea. So our ad hoc committee unanimously agreed not to sell the land. However, there is approximately 100 acres out there that is what we would call wetlands that sits up into the northeast or the northwest part of that property there. And our committee did recommend to the property committee of Waupaca County to look at selling that 100 acres. And that has a higher amount of potential impact to the taxpayers of this county from a tax standpoint. That's going to be taxed higher. And we'd have no idea what the price might be, but that's our recommendation to that group. We're hoping that that could potentially sell somewhere around the $2,000 on up per acre. So having said that, that took care of that issue as far as the cropland goes, or the land out there. Then we tried to tie together just a couple other things that surfaced to bring it back into connection with the CIP committee that I also chair. And so we looked at the situation of the amount of money that was probably going to be needed to renovate the unit out there to get it back to where it can bring in money in a way that's going to be beneficial to our residents of this county. I looked hard and long at that myself from a financial standpoint. And I told the group yesterday, I said, I really came to this conclusion as a board member. I think society begs the question, we need to care for our elderly. I don't think anybody in this room wants to subsidize any large amount of it forever. However, as I looked at the subsidy that the county has been paying, and as Gary's group and as the everybody out there at Lakeview has worked hard to try to make this as productive and beneficial for everybody as possible, it's come a long ways in the 4+ years that I've been on this committee, or on the board. From the subsidy when I came on here, it was well over $1 million, and now we're down to projecting closer to the $500,000. So also, I looked at this as a standpoint then from my standpoint as a town chairman in my town of Matson, and like I said, from society. We need to furnish ambulance service and fire service for people. That's just part of life. Someday I might, I hope not, but I might be out at that home, and I want to hope that a home like this would be available. I have never had anyone approach me that we were spending money foolishly out there, or even that they were not in support of it. So hopefully, as this discussion involves today with figures that Heidi will give you and those people from the Lakeview Manor will give you, it'll become more apparent that this is probably not a bad idea for the county to continue to probably keep a subsidy in that range. Again, it's up to each of you. I believe the county board here voted a month or so ago that we were going to keep it operating. We did not say how we're going to do it financially, but the two have to come together. I think each of you probably in your own way probably have some pros and cons about that, and that's fine. But like I said, I came to the conclusion that for approximately $500,000, I don't think that's going to be a detriment to any citizen in our county. So, having said that, before Heidi comes up here, we did look at the situation then if they had to borrow $1.3 million to modernize it, and I told them I wanted to see the full $1.3 million borrowed. They came back saying, well, we could probably pay $300,000 toward it and only had to borrow $1 million. I feel more comfortable starting out with the 1.3 because when the bonds and the time comes that we vote on the bond issues in November, we can always reduce that amount if the price comes in lower, but we cannot go above that at that time. The other thing that surfaced along the way here that probably caught us a little bit off guard was what about having fiber optics run out there? Now this was something that I think most of you in this room were made aware of about 3 years ago, the potential of the fiber optics like a loop going in the county. Right now the fiber optics goes basically, we did this here in the last year or so, we went from the courthouse over to the highway department, and that gave us a chance to back it up a little bit. However, if we ever had a major situation, a major storm or whatever took place in Waupaca County, and it all took place right in the city of Waupaca, it doesn't do us a lot of good because it still could wipe out both sites. So taking fiber optics up as far as Lakeview became a little more intriguing. First of all, the people that are up there, and I'm going to talk about the residents there and the people and their loved ones, they are kind of begging for more options with fiber optics so they can probably have Wi-Fi, Skype, and so forth with their loved ones there. But it also has a direct bearing on how we function as a county with our arms, so to speak, out there. A lot of times they are down out there with their financial things from a computer standpoint, and this would help to eliminate that. I think it also will help and have some positive impact for the whole city of Waupaca eventually too. However, the cost of this is $575,000. Again, when Heidi goes through this in a few minutes here, I think it'll become apparent that even that is not a sincere detriment to this whole project. One thing about money and time, any of these items that we're talking about become more expensive in time. Money is still probably one of the cheapest commodities we have at this time. I think when the bond would come due for actual pricing in 2014 here in November, we're still probably on the lower side of the edge. I cannot look into the future, but I don't see bonds staying low forever. So having said that, and before I take any questions, I think I want Heidi to go through everything, and then we'll step back and take some questions on that part of it, and then we'll have those individuals from Lakeview Manor explain more about the building out there so you have a better understanding and feel comfortable. Because I think before we have a vote in the month of March, I would like everybody to have all their questions answered as best as possible so that there is no confusion and everybody didn't have a right to have their say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorowicz. Now our Finance Director, Heidi Dombrowski, will take the floor.
Not as tall as Dwayne. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to start out today actually kind of going through the bonding process and what it all entails and what statutes as a county and county government we need to follow in order to go through the bond issuance process. And some of you, this may be you've heard before, some of you may not have heard of it, but it's kind of nice so that everybody understands as these resolutions start coming to the floor exactly what those mean and why we're doing the resolutions, how we are doing them. And then what I'll do is go over all the projects that are within the bond issuance that will come up in November of 2014. And I'm not an expert on any of those projects. I can kind of give you synopsis of it, but the department heads that have presented or put those projects in the plan are also here available for questions in addition to the Lakeview project. So with that being said, you have a packet on your desk. It's also a PowerPoint that I have on the screen here, and whichever you prefer to look at as we go through it is fine with me. The county requirement to issue debt. The county has to follow the Wisconsin Statute Chapter 67, municipal borrowing and municipal bonds when acquiring debt. That is the chapter that we must follow. And we utilize Ehlers and Associates as our financial advisors to prepare the documents to assure that the statutes are followed, along with preparing estimations of debt repayment structures and what that means to the taxpayer and the county board. Wisconsin Statute 6703 states that the aggregate amount of indebtedness shall not exceed 5% of the value of taxable property, or the equalized value. As of December 31st, 2013, Waupaca County's debt capacity is $190,060,225, or 5% of $3.8 billion of equalized value. 12/31/2013 outstanding debt is $31,260,000, or $158.8 million below our debt capacity. So that part of the statute we are well below and is not a concern. Wisconsin Statute 67.045 debt issuance conditions. The governing body of a county may not issue bonds or promissory notes unless one or more of 7 conditions are met. When we issue the bonds, we follow the condition F, which is the governing body adopts a resolution to issue the debt by a vote of at least 3/4 of the members elect, as defined in section 59.001. And that means that it requires 21 votes to adopt the resolution of the 27-member elect. So there has to be a favorable vote of 21 in order to pass a initial resolution. Also, within Wisconsin Stat 6705 bond issue procedures, the governing body shall, prior to the issuance of the bond, adopt a resolution that states the purpose for and maximum amount of the borrowing. The resolution adopted under this section shall be known as the initial resolution. In March of 2014, the initial resolutions will come before this body for the projects to be funded for the 2015 to 2017. This is what I talked about, the 3/4 vote of the full members elect. Wisconsin Statute 67.08, execution and negotiation. The sale of the bonds shall be public and noticed as provided by resolution. So off that resolution, at the direction of the county's financial advisors, Ehlers and Associates, circulate a notice of sale to prospective purchasers indicating when the note will be offered for public sale. At the October 2014 meeting of the county board, a second resolution would be coming before this body awarding the sale of the notes, and that requires a simple majority. Just a little bit on the process. Again, the department head CIP task force reviews the 10-year capital projects. We also review any new projects that have been submitted and then place them within the 10-year plan. The project list is updated to reflect the issuance that is then submitted and reviewed by the County Board CIP Impact Committee. The CIP Impact Committee has reviewed, made recommendations for removal of projects for various reasons, and has made a recommendation of projects that will be included in the initial resolution that will be voted on by the County Board in March of 2014. Before I go on, I just want to indicate the March 2014 vote for an issuance in November is somewhat critical because it really plays into the budget process, because we need to know what projects are supported and what would have to come out to be funded through the levy process, just so you kind of understand why that initial resolution saying that you have the intent to borrow that money for these projects means that during the budget process, then we plan for 2015 based off that initial resolution. Okay, the next few slides are very small, so I wouldn't expect that you could see them. So I have a page, if you go back, would be page 21. It's a blue sheet. I've made them bigger and possibly easier to read. And within that are the projected projects that will be funded for the issuance. The first column, which is in green, shows what we had bonded for the 2012 to 2014 issuance that will be up here in 2014. The next, which is a lighter orange color, these are the projects that were originally submitted within our 10-year plan. The $12 million for the highway improvement, that would include construction of $4 million per year for 3 years. We have, for Emergency Management Sheriff's Department, the upgrade fire frequency system for $157,000 and upgrade highway frequency system for $115,000. The circuit court, we have a courtroom video upgrade, audio upgrade for $170,000. That was removed from this, but it is a need that we'll have to try to figure out. We're going to have to be able to fund that, and we're hoping to utilize dollars that were not spent in 2013 to help fund that project in 2014. Did not really meet the 10-year or the bonding requirements, because it's more of a outside of the 10-year existence. But so this will come back up eventually here in the next few months, because that is a tremendous need up in the courtrooms at this time. Paving courthouse parking lot for $140 was also removed, but has been put back in the next issuance. So it's hasn't been removed to not be done. It's just been pushed back a little bit. We have a scale at the solid waste recycling center for $55,000, and then at the fairgrounds, 2 roof replacements on the commercial building and the goat barn, and then a grandstand pavilion for $300,000. And then for the Parks Department, Gillis Landing seawall, this is a 50% grant funded, so our expense there would be $145,000. A 50 by 100 cold storage building for $150,000, and then boat launch upgrades, which are 50% funded by grant also. Our cost there would be $90,000. So the estimated projects there would be $13,082,000, which we ended up coming into the goal of less than the previous bonding. And then you can see the other issuance costs that are associated below with that, and the total amount to be financed the net note size would be 13.2 on that piece of it. And then scenario 2 would include $1.3 million for the Lakeview remodel project, and then scenario 3 would add the $575,000 for the fiber optic project. So those are the projects. After, if you have any questions, you can always go back with the department heads on the questions, but that gives you an overview of those are the projects that I submitted to Ellers. And then we have the next page will show you what the rate, how each of these projects would come out and how the debt service would be paid. When we structure debt service payments, they're structured in Ellers projections. They're structured so that there isn't a fluctuation in levy over the years. So as you look at the payments required for these projects for the first 3 years, they're a little bit lower, and then they jump up, and that would stabilize the tax rate on debt. Again, I want to remind you that debt levy is not part of the levy limit law. So the debt levy is above and beyond any of the operating. It would not go against that piece. And if you look at, in 2015 to 17, they're projecting a 3 cent increase on tax rate, which would be about $3 on a $100,000 home increase. And that is based off their equalized projection numbers. And then it would drop to $1.50 in 2018. But you can see if you would, if any of these projects were removed, what that cost is for each of those scenarios. And the next page just breaks out the principal versus interest. Ellers is predicting a true interest rate of about 2.92% on this debt issuance, which again, as Dwayne had stated, is a fairly low interest rate at this time. I think that it's a little higher than what we originally closed on our 2011 issuance, but not much. It hasn't gone up a lot. I think, well, actually it did. I think it was 1.9 true interest rate, so it did go up a little bit. So, but that's what they're projecting. And the next slide, it just gives you a future CIP debt. What Ellers assumed here was that we would have four level payments, 10-year amortization, using same interest rate scale at $4 million per year. So on the next page, what it's doing is you'll see that here the tax rate would jump in 2019 to $1.69. If we were to do another issuance in 3 years, we would structure those payments differently so that you wouldn't see that spike in levy. All they're doing is they're equalizing that debt payment just for discussion purposes, because that's always been a concern. What you're projecting is numbers, what if we borrow again? Well, that's what they're kind of trying to do here for you. The next page, what we wanted to do was, or what was requested was to kind of look at just Lakeview individually. And what we did here was we took 2011 to 2014 and looked at the actual equalized value along with the operating levy required to utilize that process over there. And then we also did the tax rate on that. And so as you can see in 2011, the tax rate to fund Lakeview was at 31 cents per thousand. 2012, it was 25 cents per thousand. In 2013, it was 23 cents per thousand. In 2014, it was 24 cents per thousand. Then what we did is asked for a 5-year projection of operating levy. And you can see for 2015 to 2019, their tax rate, using the equalized value projection that I'm using is those that were given to me by Ellers with their projections, so that we're following it through. And you can see that the tax rate for the next 5 years, the highest would be calculated in 2015 at 19 cents. But if you go and then you add the debt levy that we would be acquiring for that 1.3, you can go over to the far right. The tax rate is, again, the highest is 19 cents per thousand. So based off their projections, they would still be 4 cents lower than the lowest year they were in the last 4 years. Make sense? Okay. We can come back to that if there's questions. I just kind of wanted to go back and to slide 14 and just kind of go through the Lakeview Manor levy impact. I kind of went through. Debt service repayment schedule is structured to keep the debt levy amount stable without large fluctuation in levy on the taxpayers, so that you're just understanding that we're still paying the debt off in 10 years. We're just structuring it so that the debt payment in the first 3 years is lower than your remaining 7, just so you're not seeing a fluctuation in your debt levy. Lakeview Manor's 5-year projected operating levy decreases approximately on average about $330,000 over the next 5 years in comparison to the 2014 operating levy support. And this decrease is a direct impact on county's overall operating levy. And the reason why I'm saying that is the operating levy is different than your debt levy, because your debt levy isn't applicable to your your debt levy or your levy laws, your levy limit laws. So you can decide if you want to apply that to utilize that debt levy, that decrease to pay off the debt, or by utilize it some other way in the budget. 15, I'm just going to again reiterate on what I would propose if all of these projects are supported. What I would propose is 2 separate initial resolutions, as we had talked, that would require 3/4 vote of the members elect. The first resolution would include the scenario 1 and 3. So we would include all those projects that I listed out plus the fiber optic. And that would be the one resolution for $13.8 million, which would fund those projects plus the fiber optic. And then I would recommend a second resolution that would not to exceed $1.3 million to fund the remodel of Lakeview Manor, which would also require 3/4 vote of the members elect. So there would be 2 separate resolutions one supporting the Lakeview Manor, the other one supporting the rest of the projects. Each of these initial resolutions that would be voted upon in March of 2014 would require the adoption by 3/4 of the county board members elect. Then the second resolution that comes to this body is, I have November 2014, but it most likely would come in October of 2014, and that is simple majority authorizing the sale of the bonds based upon the bids that that is submitted to Ellers. There are some spend down requirements that some of you may be aware of. When you issue tax exempt municipal bonds, the borrower must meet special spend down requirements for the bonds for the obligation to be exempt from the arbitrage rebate requirement. 15% of gross proceeds are to be spent down within 6 months, 60% of gross proceeds within 1 year, and 100% of gross proceeds within 18 months. This is a 3-year issuance. So we already are not going to meet those requirements. So what happens is Waupaca County, we invest the bond proceeds with PMA Financial Network, and we have to provide them with spend down transactions on a monthly basis, and they assist us to look at the bond rate, or at what we're doing to make sure that there is no positive arbitrage that exists. And what arbitrage is, it's when you invest your money and a profit is made the profit made from investing inherently lower yielding tax exempt debt proceeds in a higher yielding taxable investment. Arbitrage rebate payments are required if the investment yield earned on the gross proceeds of the debt issue are invested above the bond yield. Right now, the current interest rate does not really yield a positive arbitrage situation, but you do need to be aware of it, and the dynamics could change in 2017. All it means if we earn more money on our investment before we spend it on the projects, there is a rebate that we must pay back to the IRS. In conclusion, on behalf of the department head management team, I would like to thank you for the time to present this information to you and your consideration and support of the 2015-17 capital project funding. Any questions on the information I provided? Before I take any questions, I just want to also let you know that in the back of your packet, starting at page 22, it's the blue page that says 22 at the bottom. These are the actual documents that I received from Ellers for scenario 1, then adding scenario 2, and then adding scenario 3. I just want you to see, if you want to, you can see where my figures are coming from. I tried to put them in a document where you could see them side by side and maybe look at it a little easier. But if you want to know where I'm coming up with some of those figures, you will be able to see how Ellers has done that. And I have, worked with them very closely on this and really appreciate the efforts that they've taken to provide those numbers for us. Okay, any questions for me?
Questions for Heidi? Mr. Ellis.
Heidi, is there any way we can borrow more money than this? In the real financial world, we're starting with little baby steps about normalizing interest rates. In 1980, the prime rate was 19.5%, and I was earning 17.5% on Treasury bills. Right now, Treasury bills are 1% on the same one. Somewhere here, if we keep on taking little steps, we may never reach some of our goals. I'm thinking specifically of the highway. We got a lot of talented people there, could probably manage more money per year and get more projects done before inflation comes and bites this whole business rather hard.
We have, as stated, I mean, we have a lot of debt capacity. The policy of this board is to pay off debt within 10 years. The biggest question would be, when you take off, that money really has to be spent in 3 years. And when you look at the construction period, the biggest, and you raise a very good question, the biggest question there is, can the highway department perform and spend, how much work can they do in that 3 years? That's the bigger question, and then what would this board support? And in addition to that, when those initial resolutions come to this body, it's for the maximum amount. We could discuss it, you know, we could raise that, you could amend that resolution. In November, when we actually go for the sale, we would readjust the amount that is needed to fund. You know, it's really a question of this board on how you would want us to proceed to that, and a question for the highway department as to whether or not they could spend those funds down within 3 years.
Bob, you understand money too, so. The question, and there's other ones that do too. The question is basically is what Heidi said as far as expending that money down. Now, whether we add a couple more million in there for the highway area, I think they could spend that down. Right now, they've been aggressive. I shouldn't say they've been aggressive. Some of the items that they've been tackling on County Trunk T are costing them more money than probably what they envisioned. So they actually have been spending more money than what they got left. So 2014, they have to kind of readjust. But to answer your question, if you remember from this group, the majority finally consented a couple years ago here when we were bucking heads a little bit as far as borrowing money, that we said if the highway could use $4 million each year for 6 years, and then after that they could probably back off a little bit because they had their major reconstruction of their roads done, and then going forward would be a little less. So maybe for you and I that really understand the dollar here, hopefully we won't have to borrow as much going forward, Bob, after 3 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Dwayne. Any other questions? Mr. Morgan.
I'll just follow up on the suggestion made of borrowing. Maybe Supervisor Federitz could expand on this, but that fiber optic project totally is estimated at 2.8 million. That could be speeded up, and they would be able to get that done in a shorter time frame. And it might cost a lot less if you did it in one project instead of spreading it out over several projects. But I don't know of anything else.
Any other questions?
Are there any questions specifically to that fiber optic project? I know that Dwayne, Supervisor Federwitz, sorry, did address that, and it, you know, there are a number of areas that would benefit tremendously if we were able to move forward with that project. Communications and disaster recovery would help with the emergency management side of things, and also with the actual efficiencies of the Lakeview Manor operations. They are down quite frequently, and so that is why we kind of put that to the forefront when we started discussing some of this, because we just didn't want that to fall on the back burner. You know, it is a large expense, but we have found that it has been beneficial for that process to go over to highway, and you're right, it is a huge expense to make the full circle, but it would become very beneficial. Communications to the towers, a lot of different things could happen once that circle is completed.
Just to add to that, Heidi, Supervisor Penny is the chair of our Information Systems Committee, and Vice Chair Lohern and myself. We did make the decision to go with fiber optic. It's more expensive, but it's going to last a lot longer, more efficient, and this is a system we chose for Waupaca County. And when I heard recently how slow things were as far as speed and the downtimes at Lakeview Manor, a medical facility, and has important billing situations and other things electronically, I was flabbergasted. They certainly need to have fiber optics going there sooner than later. I myself do a lot of billing, well, not myself, my staff, of medical billings. And if it's slow and it's not working, that's revenue not coming in. So I really would push for fiber optic at this time. Any other comments or discussion? Supervisor Craig.
My question is, I don't remember, what was the total cost for fiber optics to get to Waupaca where it would be the backup system?
575,000 was the link from here to Lakeview.
Right.
But
to Waupaca.
Well, to go beyond that,
Right.
We had that at the meeting yesterday. That was part of phase 3. And what we did was the total cost of phase 3 is actually the highest cost phase, and that's $953,000. But what we did is we broke out the Lakeview piece. They're estimating about $578,000 to do that portion, and then to get to the fairgrounds would be $248,612. And then to get to the future highway would be a phase 3, which is $126,333. This phase that we're talking about would not necessarily connect to the future highway site. It would go past it. So when we would go to the future, there'd be a strand that would go off to the future highway site. That cost is $126,000. So that total phase to get all the way to the fairgrounds is $953,000 approximately. $575,000 is what will get us to Lakeview.
Any other questions?
Was there any thought of, as long as we're going from Waupaca to Waupaca, to possibly running it out to the site we bought in the town of Lynn, where we eventually are going to build a new highway shop and save that amount of money that's going to cost us if we wait until that time? Was that?
That is part of this phase, but it doesn't take us actually to the site. You would have to put a strand to the new highway shop. That's the $126,000 piece. That would, if we were to fund that whole phase, it would be $952,000. We just didn't feel that we didn't want to ask for the world at that point and just said, let's just get the Lakeview. If for some reason we needed that connection for the highway shop within the next 3 years, we would have to plan for that through the operating levy, which would be about $126,000.
And then a question of Dwayne. If by chance we decided to sell that 100 acres of wetland that you talked about, the revenue from that sale would go into the general fund?
Yeah, well, Heidi can comment on that, but that's correct. It goes into the general fund.
Yes. And any sale of county land goes to the general fund. That does not mean this board cannot direct us to how you would like to spend that money, or if you want to save that money, or how you want to utilize it. But it is revenue within the general fund.
Just, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The only thing that I thought our charge was on the CIP committee, and recognizing the supervisors here can do what they wish, and I understand being a little more aggressive in some areas, but I think our charge was to try to keep this as financially prudent as we could for our citizens. And I'm going to go back to 3 years ago when I stood in front of you. I kept it now again to a cost of a little less than a blizzard. So it's $3 for a $100,000 house per year. Or I guess for those that have a Bloody Mary, it'd be a little more. But you know, if you really think about $3 bill, we're getting a lot for our money during this period of time.
Any other comments? Questions? This is the informational session, so now's the time to ask. Supervisor Craig.
We're just asking Heidi now about the procedure, right? If we want to ask about individual projects, that comes later.
Yeah, well, what I would like to do is, here's the procedure. And I've given you a list of the projects. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the projects. What we would like to do is have Lakeview kind of give an update as to where they're at, because that is 1.3 million. That will be a separate resolution, and I think this body really needs to hear what they have in the works there. Any other questions on projects? I don't know if you want to take those now or wait till after Melissa's done, but yes, you're right. Later.
Anything else on this? Before Melissa comes before the group on the podium here, let's just take a real quick break. Okay, we have Melissa Drews here and is going to tell us about the Lakeview, the Manor plans.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So since the resolution was passed, there are a few things that we have done in order to get the process moving. And one of those, as we have here, is we have engaged an architect, and I believe you got that plan in your packet, and I'll go over that in a few minutes. We have that remodel plan. We're in the process of creating admission criteria, writing policies and procedures, initial work on the application for the licensure. We do need the policies and procedures completed before we can do the licensure. And then, of course, we working on the RFP for bids as soon as we get that the okay and the money, numbers for the money. So some of the timelines that we are working under, we have, it takes approximately 60 days for the state to approve the plan once it's completed. It takes about 30 days to get the application approved. We do not at this time have the actual remodel numbers. We will be getting that at the end of the month. And we will receive the actual costs in January. And financing not to exceed 1.3 million as originally quoted, as Heidi said earlier. So the plan itself, again, you got that in your packet, but the colored sections are the sections that we're talking about as far as being the remodel plan. So if you look at that plan and you look at the left unit, the left side, that is what we call internally D-wing. So this is a unit that we would do a CBRF, and I know that we use a lot of letters when we're talking about things in healthcare, much like government, you know, the IRS and the FBI and the ACA. So today we're going to be talking about the CBRF, which is actually a community-based residential facility. We have to work within the Chapter 83 State of Wisconsin regulatory guidelines. These guidelines give us minimal square footage requirements for each type of patient that you care for. It requires a separate entrance, and if you look at that plan, we did do a separate entrance right here. That comes in off of the main parking lot. We're unable to mix nursing home residents with unless there's a special function. For instance, in order to get into their unit, these people by regulation do not have to go or should not go past the nursing home clients. We can, however, have special functions. For instance, we can have parties within the facility which these people can choose to attend those things. The other part of that is that visitors should not have to go past nursing home residents in order to visit their loved ones. So again, hence we have to have that separate entrance. That entrance also has to have a double door, which it shows here. So it does have to have those double doors for the entrance as well. So and it's just a few of the regulations that we are required to adhere to when the architect was doing this plan. So what is the payer source? The payer source is private pay or family care. Those are the only two payer sources available to a CBRF. Clients to include those folks who are the difficult to manage and do not fit into a traditional CBRF. And there are many of those folks out there where we have gotten, since the newspaper article about the resolution that was approved, we are getting many, many phone calls from people that do not fit into those settings, that they are looking for placement for their loved ones. This particular CBRF will be taking care of the mentally ill, the early dementia with behaviors, focus on behavior, not physical needs. These folks will require minimal physical needs on this particular unit. All rooms have private baths and showers. Focus on activities and keeping busy to minimize behaviors, assisting to maintain their independence for the future. Cost saving as staffing requirements are less extensive than nursing home requirements that we have now. We do not have to have a licensed staff person on the premises at all times. However, being attached to a nursing home, we're very fortunate because we can share some of those costs to do those assessments, and they can do them quickly, and we can respond to change of conditions much faster, and we can still continue to control costs. Next one. This is, in our facility, we call it the A wing. The private entrance to this unit is the back parking lot. This unit is memory care. What we're looking at memory care, the challenge for the architect was to give us what we truly needed for a memory care client, but yet maintain the footprint, if you will, of the unit to control costs. So they were actually able to do that because, again, we have a few different requirements for this type of unit. And on this unit, if you see this part right here, it goes around. These are resident units on the outside. These are all common areas, and the walking space or the walking circle is that gray area. That was very important when we had the architect looked at this unit, because we all know that these early stages of dementia folks need that activity. They do not do well with dead spaces. For instance, end of hallways. They don't do well with those. They get very anxious, upset because they can't move any further, and they don't have the ability to just make that turnaround and go back the other way. It's just a very difficult thing for them. So in this unit, we have to abide by many of the Chapter 83 regulatory requirements, but because of the type of client that we're talking about taking care of, the focus is on early and middle stages of dementia. These are folks that are going to be up and about. They're going to be moving. These folks need room to walk. The walking circle is in the plan. It eliminates dead spaces, decreases anxiety, activity focused, and research has shown bathrooms and rooms increase anxiety and behaviors. Therefore, on this unit, we took the private baths out. And those folks will be using the that middle corridor, which would be common bathrooms and showers and spas and that kind of thing. This research states that bathrooms are dead spaces, so they get lost. They don't really remember what that space is for, therefore they get more upset. Or if they're in the early stages, they see that space and they want to use that space all the time because they do remember what it's for. So it's really quite unique, and we have to remember all of the types of clients that we'll care for. And so the research has shown that when you do those common bathrooms, then you need to put the toilet seats maybe a different color so that they over time they recognize that, and then they remember what to use it for. So as we're doing our research and our policies, and we're looking at touring other facilities to see what they're doing that works and what they've done that didn't work, we're learning more and more about the things that we should do in order to be successful for these clients. And I also might add that Family Care has approached me on a number of occasions as well, and they tell me that they are in need of a facility that will take these folks who are the more difficult to care for. One of the quotes that one of the Family Care case managers said to me is that, you guys are a whole lot more tolerant of some of the things that these people do than other facilities. So it was kind of an interesting conversation. And then, is there a slide on there? It has that. No? Well, what I was going to show, had it been there, was a slide that actually shows the actual projections that we did. Is that something that you would be interested in? I'm going to certainly find it, and I could have Melissa come up and explain those projections. I do have it here. Okay. Let's just.
I assume future possibilities.
There's not a copy of this. This is essentially the same information that Heidi gave you in her packet. It just looks a little bit differently, but I just kind of wanted Melissa to explain, how we got to this, some of the assumptions that we made, and why.
Is it possible to move it over a little so we can see more of the 2015 going forward?
Sure. Heidi already went over where we were at with tax levy, operating tax levy in 2011, 12, 13, and 14. But then Dwayne had asked that we project 2015 for 5 years into the future. So what you're going to see here, this is our operating levy, and this is the debt service. And Heidi had that on one of her pages in her presentation, but some of the assumptions that we're making are that we have 22 available beds on the CBRF assisted living side and 29 nursing home beds. The first year in 2015, we're assuming 80% occupancy. The following year, 91% occupancy, and the remaining 3 years, 92% occupancy. We had a study done by Wifley, a company out of Madison, and that's what they suggested we use as far as occupancy rate. That would explain why our tax levy is higher in 2015, because at 80% we're building our business. 3% annual increase in private pay revenue on both the assisted living side and on the nursing home side. Again, that was a suggestion from Wifley, so we followed that. 3% increase in expenses, operating expenses for the entire facility, but 10% increase in health insurance. That's kind of an unknown factor, but I worked with HR and that's what they suggested that we use. We are going to finance the entire 1.3 million. At that time I was under the impression that it was 3.25. I understand now that it's 2.92 for the interest rate, so that will be a little bit lower. And someone had asked how many FTEs, in other words, full-time equivalents, we think we're going to be losing with this. Once we're fully up and running, I'm anticipating that we will lose 6.5 FTE from the Lakeview staffing. Any questions at all on the numbers?
Can you go back up to the chart?
Microphone, Pat, can't hear.
I just wanted her to go to the chart, because I didn't get all the figures there. Thank you.
Will we have to pay bed tax on those beds that are on the assisted living side?
No, the bed tax would just happen on the 29 nursing home beds, and that's still at $170 per bed per month. That's a big cost savings.
However, we're not necessarily gonna just get rid of those beds, because we may need them in the future, you just never know. But we can reserve those beds for 5 years. If you just give the beds back to the state, you can never get them back. One of the things that Christy talked about when we did our presentation, I guess it was last year, how about that? When we did our presentation, she talked about an IMD unit, or as the industry calls it, a state-only unit. That is something that we are still working on, and we're also looking into the aspect or the potential to start a consortium, or to be get contracts with other counties to take care of their difficult people. That is something that is not included in this because that we haven't done all the research and the work on. But I know that IMD or state-only unit was mentioned in some of our reports, and I just want to make sure that we have not stopped that research, because we're still looking into it. With Health and Human Services, we're going to continue to work on that, because there's definitely a need for those folks. When we talk about payer source, the nursing home, our payer sources will continue to be Medicare, private pay, Medicaid/family care, and insurance. That is not going to change for those 29 beds. The other units, as I said before, the payer sources are private pay and family care. For a state-only unit, or for the mentally ill unit, that is all county money. That they cannot accept any public funds for that unit. But that is completely different than any of this remodeling project that we have given you today. If we did that unit within the nursing home itself, there would have to again be some internal changes to the physical plant for those folks, because those folks tend to be younger, and potentially more difficult and more violent. So we would have to look at that, and that is again something that we're continuing to work on for the future.
Would any of our present patients fall into the assisted living category?
You know, we think so. Since last year, we've had some changes with our clientele, but yes, we do still have some that would fall into that we could move into an assisted living almost immediately. We also have some memory care clients that could move in as well.
Mr. Morgan?
Has Lakeview Manor used an outside consultant for their planning process, or has it been pretty much internal?
No, we have used Whipley. Whipley, we started the process last March, and we have used them to help us with our assumptions, and they actually did the assumptions for the freestanding. And for the internally, the remodel, we use those same assumptions. We worked with them.
Thank you.
Melissa, would you have an answer about the consortium by next month? I think that might be a game changer.
I do not believe so. That, I mean, a lot of research has to go into this. And we, you know, I think on February 5th, we actually have a tour scheduled, or we're trying to get a tour scheduled for some of those facilities, for one of those facilities that does have a consortium. But that is something that that's gonna take a while. That is not gonna happen quickly.
Mr. Murphy?
Melissa, the assisted living, you mentioned that the pay for that is private pay and family care.
Correct.
How does that average amount meet our expenses for those individuals?
With any business, especially an assisted living type, you really have to have a mix of private pay and family care. In my conversations with family care, one of the things that I have to be very careful with is my contract. We are not going to settle for the general reimbursement that everybody else gets, because the people we care for are going to be different, are going to be more difficult. So that is going to be in the contracting phase. And so if we watch our expenses closely, we could do that with no problem at all.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? I don't see any.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Before we go on to the next item, I just want to extend, of course, a general thank you to all the staff here at the courthouse. What a great job you've done with our budget. What a great job you did with the CIP planning. You're as good as I bragged to you about all over the state. I wouldn't trade our staff for anybody's. And also, I want to thank Dwayne Federwich chairing the CIP committee, for the supervisors, and Vice Chair Jim Lawhern on this ad hoc committee. And of course, Gary Barrington and the staff and his committee for a lot of years of looking in what can we do to better ourselves for our seniors in Waupaca County. And certainly Melissa and her staff, what a fine job they have done out there, and been answering all our questions and been there for us. Thank you very much. With that, I'll call Dave Teal to the stand.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Did you not say that we could ask questions of the CIP projects? Is it now later?
Heidi said if there was anything on that
Oh.
list.
I didn't know we were going to go there today, but
Oh.
yes, we can. Uh,
I think I'll go sit somewhere else then.
Yeah, you can be seated, Dave.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Or did you want it a different date?
I'd rather we did it next month.
Mary, is this on? Yeah, just open the door and then hit the top button. Yeah, then you're good.
You know, and ladies and gentlemen, we have to really give our finance director a pat on the chair. In the last month, she's come up with facts and figures for us in the last minute, and it's unbelievable for the information that she's had to give us in a short term. Thank you very much, Heidi. I guess you're up now, Dave.
Oh, okay. All right. Pat's got our questions answered?
Next month.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Chairman. Mike and I are going to talk about a project that, one, we want to make you very aware of, and two, we want to get you involved with. And it's something that really goes back a long way, probably 5 or 6 years. And we're at a point, I think we're at a point where we're making progress. Good progress, really. So we wanted to tell you about what we've been doing. And this is just a slide to show you the name of the project. It's the Waupaca County Joint Effort Marketing is a grant program from the Wisconsin Department of Commerce, and it's our tourism development initiative. And we have 8 of our municipalities that have been partnering with us financially, as well as working with us on the project over the past 2 years. And really, they've been working with us for the duration of these 5 to 6 years we've been working at this stuff, and I'll get into that a little bit. And then Mike from the UW Extension Office, my corporation, and of course the Wisconsin Department of Tourism. A little background, you've heard me say this a lot of times, that we have a 3-legged stool in our county. That's really the basis for our economy. It's what drives our economy. We're not a whole lot different than the rest of the counties that are in Wisconsin. And for us, manufacturing, I'll just throw a couple of stats at you. Manufacturing is a $2.1 billion industry. That's the industry sales income. And some of these have, could be a little dated. I'm talking about 2010 here, so it's probably risen a little bit. But it brings in 24% of our jobs in this county, and accounts for $226 million in labor income. So that's the money that really gets spread around in the county, creates other jobs, and keeps us going. And when you look at the ag, it's a $872 million industry. There is some blur between ag and manufacturing depending on how they categorize, because when you look at like AgriPure, they could be categorized as manufacturing and or ag. In this scenario, we're taking the production side of the ag and we're putting it all together with the manufacturing side, if you will. So that's 17% of our total jobs in the economy are in the ag industry. And then you get to tourism, and it's a $79 million industry for us, and 11% of our jobs. So you look at that, we're talking about over 50% of our jobs in these 3 industries, and of course a large amount of the money that comes in these 3 industries. So the Hometown program was a grant program that we secured about 5 to 6 years ago from the Department of Commerce, and it was really what we were using to build the collaborations between the communities and to start to try to address the situation that we've had in our downtown commercial areas for probably 30 years, which is they're all declining. And it's not just us in Waupaca County, it's all over the US in small towns. It's hard to keep your downtowns thriving. Walmarts have moved into the world. Amazons have moved into the world. People get their goods and services in a much different way than they did in the past, when New London was the hub for 20,000 people, 15,000 people. Waupaca was the hub. doesn't exist anymore. It's not coming back. So how do we address that? How do we continue to try to have vital downtowns? Because they're important to our communities. We identify with them as people. We want to have a vibrant city that we live in. So that program basically helped us find motivated people in these communities that wanted to join us to address these issues. And they're tough issues, obviously. You don't solve them overnight. They didn't happen overnight. The Joint Effort Marketing Grant was the next step, and that was a program run by the Wisconsin Department of Tourism, which helps us create a strategic plan for tourism countywide. If you go to the next slide, Mike, I would appreciate it. The reason I say that is because the Wisconsin Department of Tourism hires tourism economics to do basically an economic breakdown of the tourism industry every year. If you look at this chart, the thing that I want to point out is that everything but the air travel of 4% is really our small business community, is really our downtowns, is really our retail and service sector. 96% of every dollar that's coming in from tourism is being spent in our small businesses. So that begs the question of, we need to bring more people here. We need to grow that. That's how we're going to make an effect on our small businesses in our downtowns. We're going to be able to help them stay healthier if we bring more people in here and spend their money. So that's where we're headed with this. Now we know, again, the year one of the grant was to create a strategic plan that we could all follow in the county. Year two was to launch that strategic plan. So last year we launched that, and we knew that in order to bring more people here, they had to be farther than 90 miles away if they were going to stay overnight. And of course, we want them to stay overnight, spend money in the hotels, and bed and breakfast, and then we want them to shop and go to our restaurants. And during the strategic planning process, we were able to identify who these people are. Now, when you shop with your credit card and you go to your store and you give your zip code and stuff like that, unfortunately, people start to gather data on you, or unfortunately, however you want to look at it. The marketers think it's very fortunate. The privacy advocates think it's very unfortunate. But they start to identify you, categorize you, and know a lot of things about you. So we were able to identify who comes here. And we've got lists from some of our bigger tourism industry people, like the hotels and the campgrounds, and who are your customers, and they gave us zip codes, and we were able to track where those people are coming from, and then we knew where these other people who are very similar to who comes here are living, and a lot of them from more than 90 miles away, not surprisingly, are in the Milwaukee suburbs, and they like to do what we have to offer. And so that's where we started to target our advertising, and we were using Time Warner to do that. And they were able to package not just the cable side of things, but also the internet side of things, because that's where we need to go, is into those mediums. That's where, and we'll show you, that's where everybody is going to plan their tourism outings and their vacations. And so, some of the top vehicles that, and now we were able to, when you look at those circles on that last one, we were able to actually target, we don't have to put our ad in every Milwaukee area. We could actually literally target those two suburbs and get on the channels that we thought matched, what we were trying to do. Some of the outdoor stuff, the Golf Channel, National Geographic, and we were able to run 1,200 spots over 30 days in June of 2013. Now, we are slotted to just work on the second quarter of the year with the money that we're spending. That's the contract that we have with the Wisconsin Department of Tourism. Our third quarter is when we bring in most of the money into our county in tourism. So they wanted us to work on another quarter that isn't as popular for people coming here. So we chose the second quarter April, May, and June. We had a pretty tough spring last year, so we held back most of our spending till we got towards June because, you know, it was cold here. We knew people probably weren't traveling, and we wanted to make sure that, you know, it was great here when we were running our ads and then get them to come. So how do we do that? What we decided that we have some actually quite talented people already in our county, and we wanted to use them. Some of you may remember Roger Radley. He used to work here many years ago, and has turned himself into a national comedian, and he's very good at it. And he travels all over the country. And I called him up and asked him if he would be interested in starring in our commercial, and he was. And he did that for us because he loves Waupaca and Waupaca County, and he did not charge us. And my goal is down the road is to create a series of ads with Roger because he has these unbelievably great characters that he uses in his comedy act. And you're going to see one of them today. Mad Dog and Merrill, I'm sure a lot of people know who they are. Again, nationally known for their grilling and very funny guys. So they have a show that's shown in about 6 states. We did a partnership with them where we ran ads on their show as well as they did an entire segment on Waupaca County for us. So again, ways for us to get more exposure with a limited amount of money that we had. And we're going to go to the commercial.
Before I show you the commercial, one of the steps in the strategic planning process or coming out of that was to brand the community. And in doing that, you do research. And what we found is that the people who visit here tend to be very independent-minded. And yes, Pat, you would fit well as a tourist here. And these independently minded people have a passion in one or a couple of pursuits. So the tagline that goes along with the commercial and really the brand is, it's your day. And the idea is, it's your day to do whatever the heck you want to do, as long as you're spending money in Waupaca County. So you're going to see a very independently minded approach in this commercial.
That's right. I'm drinking milk right out of the carton. I live life on my own terms. I visited Waupaca County. I battled the white water of the Wolf River, biked bucolic backcountry roads, caught bass on sky blue lakes, perused shops, give a feather and yawn. Oh, what a piece of land.
Shakespeare, you better have a class for that.
Visit WaupacaCounty.com. Get clicking, start living. I'd rather get a call from Waupaca County.
So as you can see, Roger is very good at what he does, and he threw that in for us for free, trying to help us get going here. He has some really funny characters that he has in his act, and we could use them to our advantage over the long haul, which we want to do. So in addition to the cable, we started, Time Warner approached us as we were doing this project in the middle of the project last year, in the middle of our spend with them, and said, hey, we've got another interesting thing that we can do on the internet side. We want to tell you about that. And we had already been creating our website for probably the year and a half already. We had been getting it ready, and that's where we were pushing. As you might have saw on the ad, the website's listed. We're pushing traffic to the website because that's where all the businesses are listed. That's where people can find out what they can do and how they can plan their trip in Waupaca County. So they came up to us with another idea where we were able to target, again, if you've ever, and I'll tell this story, it's just a personal one. I bought a coat for my wife for Christmas, and I researched it intensely on the web and looked at a lot of different coats. And for the next week and a half, I got code ads popping up every time I was on the web. Okay, so you had that experience. That's what we're doing here. We're putting impressions in front of people with our Waupaca County banner ad every time they go into country living or outdoor, and we're steering them, if you will, trying to get them to go to our website, and we're advertising Waupaca County. So if they've been to that site 4 or 5 times, we know they're interested. That's when our impression pops up on their website. And so that, again, identifying people through their behaviors and able to use that to, you know, that's what's happening. We know that. We're all experiencing it. So we were able to throw that into our package. Tourism let me rearrange the amount of money that was spent on cable, direct some towards the internet, and we did that kind of on the fly last year. And again, we started moving into Northeast Wisconsin because Time Warner covers Northeast Wisconsin, and that's obviously a very great potential market for us, the Fox Valley. So, and that's going to be where we're headed for year 3 too. Because not only we know that a lot of people from the Fox Valley aren't necessarily going to stay overnight, but the day trippers also come here to use our assets and spend money here. Mike's going to go into now what the website looks like, how it works, and what we've done so far to this point with it.
Okay, so we're at the home page here, the landing page for the website. So when you get here, you're going to see some nice pictures. I think they're winter pictures right now. And then you're going to scroll down. You're going to have a map of Waupaca County. There are going to be some featured places. I was playing around with Iola a little bit ago. When you come here initially, you're going to see more than just this as a featured place. Here's a little video of the Iola IGA actually, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Across the top here, across this bar, you're going to see where our major links are, categories for our major types of businesses. So chambers, you're going to be linked up with all the chambers in Waupaca County. Dining, number of different categories there, bars, coffee, ice cream, etc. Indoors, you know, and you can go on throughout this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Let's say, for example, you were very interested in coming to Waupaca County in the next 3 weeks. You wanted to do something. Click on events. I'm going to go to everywhere. Click on events, and here you can see you can do all kinds of things. The Winter Whirl is next weekend in Clintonville. The Candlelight Trail Night down at Hartman Creek Park next weekend. If you want to go sledding in a kayak, which is pretty wild, you can do that. And if you're not into taking risks at breaking arms or legs, you could always just snowshoe. A fishing jamboree, etc. You can go down this. Now, if you're not interested in everywhere in the county, you're going to see a relative up in, say, Iola. I'm a little partial to Iola, you all know that. So are you, Terry? Well, let's go to Iola, see what's going on in Iola. Well, we got the Winter Carnival up there. It's a great place for all 27 supervisors to visit in a couple of weeks. Well, if you're interested in doing that, let's take a look at what that Winter Carnival is all about. Nice little piece on what you can do on those 2 days, and encourage you to come up to Iola. Now, let's say while you're there, you get
Map of how to get there too.
Oh yeah, a map of how to, let's say you're from Chicago. Let's say, you know, some of Terry, your relatives want to come up. We're going to come from Chicago. You don't have to go anywhere. It's all right on the website. You don't have to find a map. You just, right there it is. Look at that. It'll take you 369 kilometers, 229 miles. And it probably even tells you how long. Yeah, 3 hours and 43 minutes. If you're Terry, that's, you know, 3 hours. And let's say you're at the lutefisk dinner, and you decide, well, it's getting late. I'm going to stay overnight. See what we got for hotels up in that Iola. Look at that. Look at that. The Norseman House Motel, one of the best establishments around. Let's see a little bit more about what that deal is about. Nice little description of the Norseman House Motel. Okay, free wireless internet. You guys got that there. All right. Cool. So now let's say you're a little hungry. You're up in Iola. Let's see what we got for some restaurants here. We've got our place to stay. Now we want to have a couple of beers and something to eat. Now, the Millstone is not open in the wintertime. We know that, but they've got a nice little video. Let's check it out just to see if maybe that's something we want to come back to in the spring.
My name is Tom Fusick, and my wife Melanie and I bought the Iola Mills property in 1996. We specialize in obviously coffees and espresso, but we make our own gelato, which is an Italian ice cream. We make it on site, which enables us to use local ingredients and experiment with different flavors and that sort of thing, which is fun. In addition to our sandwich, soup, and salad menu, I started serving pizza on Friday and Saturday nights. We do have a beer license. We feature local beers. On the property, there are 3 buildings that are on the National Register of Historic Places. We have recycled and repurposed a lot of architectural antiques. The countertops are all bird's eye maple that came from the Thomas Edison buildings in New London. I think we're getting close enough that we can expand into the mill and at least do some functions this year.
All right, so wow, it really piqued my interest. I think I'm going to have to come back there in the spring, but I'm hungry, so Waupaca isn't too far away. Let's go down to Waupaca and see what they got for some restaurants. Ah, T-Dubs. I've heard about that place. Let's look there. Okay. And what a nice description. Let's see if they got some decent food. I like that video. Let's watch that video.
I'm Shan, the operating partner here at T-Dubs Pub in Waupaca, Wisconsin. The building itself was built in 1868, and we tried to keep the posts and beams, the stone walls, that kind of thing as natural as possible. Our menu consists of Irish amber salmon. That's our #1 seller. It's a fresh 8-ounce portion of Norwegian salmon that we cut in-house. We get the fresh fillets. We make all of our sausages in-house for our bangers and smash. We switch up those flavors every week. Lydia, our executive chef, she just decides, okay, this is what we're gonna have this week for sausage. Last week it was a spicy Bloody Mary lamb sausage. So we have a really extensive menu. As far as our bar goes, though, we do have a seasonal specialty drink menu that are drinks that are made in-house. And then we also have a full martini menu. I mean, people that come here for the first time, we want them to be able to have a great conversation, to have a wonderful meal, great drinks, and to feel like they have just a wonderful experience while they're here.
All right, so you go to Iola, you get some lutefisk and lefse, you stay at a Norwegian motel that's run by an Irishman, and then you go get some Norwegian salmon at the Irish pub. So we could go on and on with this. This is a website that is intended to be a tool for potential visitors to interact with and decide to come here and spend money that currently isn't here, and start to create jobs, really revitalize downtowns, and build those small businesses, as Dave said. Let's go back to the presentation. On your desk, you have this piece, and it goes through very quickly a few of the impacts on the front page. Not all of them, but a few of them. This is what we're calling a sell sheet. Part of the idea, as Dave will explain to you in a minute, is to begin to sell some of that advertising space and have those videos up for as many businesses as we can have on that website. In that very short 1-month window, and I'll get to the impacts on the back side, we had a lot of impacts, but before we do that, you'll see some of the reasons why we've chosen internet, why we've chosen videos. The landscape with regard to tourism development has changed with the onset of the internet. 89% of travelers, as you see on that front page, use the internet to plan their trips. Okay? For any of you that have gone on trips, you've probably started with the internet. 89% of people use that. 73% of people, while they're searching, search the internet specific to a certain interest. We have very deep interests that people who have that passion and that interests should be coming to partake in. When you look down a little bit more, calling for information, which we all used to do 20 years ago, calling up somebody in that local community, calling is only done by 9% of the people anymore. Okay? Once at a destination, 58% of people depend upon online sources. What does that tell us? That tells us you better have some kind of mobile app to be able to really leverage your online resources, which is actually a part of the project. Last year, 51% of leisure travelers watched travel-related videos. That's why we went with videos. Okay? If you're going somewhere, likely you're going to watch a video before you go there. We've got these videos up online, very tastefully done, short, not going to bore somebody, but enough information to get them excited. If you flip over to the second page, you'll see some of the impacts. So in that very short window, 30 days, 5,300 YouTube videos. So people saw the commercial, saw the website, viewed the videos. There was a 400% increase in web traffic, and there were 2,100 unique views of that map. 2,100 people went in, clicked in their location, how do I get to XYZ business? There are currently over 1,300 businesses that are now input into that system. I'm sure we missed a few, but the idea here is to use tourism as a gateway to further downtown and even some community development, which we might talk about sometime later. Over 1.5 million impressions on websites, and again, 1,200 insertions into the TV market. So 1,200 ads were run, 1,200 of those 30-second ads in that Milwaukee market. So quite a bit accomplished with, quite honestly, very little financial input, which Dave will talk about right now.
So these are the budget numbers from year 1 and 2, where we did the research, the brand development, the website development, started developing some of the online ads and the YouTube videos. By the way, 34 YouTube videos were created free for the businesses in the county, and we chose them according to, we have 2 people from each of the communities that have been our advisory committee throughout this whole process. And they were the ones who identified some of the businesses in those communities to do videos of. So we spent $94,000, a little over $94,000, and where did that come from? It came from the Department of Tourism, 54, and then the communities have all chipped in for the rest of it. And they did it kind of based on population. So a little bit more for Waupaca, a little bit less for MANOR kind of thing. And then Mike and I, that was for the grant, we needed to show a value on the amount of time that we put into it. So that was the total at the bottom. Now year 3, that's this year, 2014. This is the last year that we are able to get money from the Wisconsin Department of Tourism for this project. And then we need to sustain this. So here's our plan. Again, the website development, that continues to be worked on and will always continue to be worked on. The online ads, or the banner ads, if you will, the YouTube videos, and now mobile apps for the Android and the iPhone, as well as for, you know, these little things, because people take these with them too now. So the pads. And the last thing is what the Department of Tourism wanted us to do this year, which was to get more day trip traffic into the county. So what we're doing is we're going to create some visitor packages. We have the ability through the website to use coupons, so they can track the people that are actually coming in and spending money in their businesses when they turn in the coupons. So we're going to try to put a package together in each community. So let's say Terry and the golf course is a lot. That's a logical package. Maybe a restaurant involved with that. So we're trying to do at least one in each community, track all that, and have that information at the end. We believe that it can be, and again, we'll be doing that with banner ads in the Fox Valley, promoting those packages. Come onto the website and see what you'd like to do there, and here's a package for you. So now this year, obviously, we need to raise some money from the businesses. I think, do we have that, did we have that handed out? It's not up
We
here.
didn't do a handout of that one, no.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that explains what we've done and where we're going. So every business has the ability to have a free listing. Now, there may be some businesses in Waupaca County that are not listed on this website, so I'm not guaranteeing that we have every business up there. But we did a fairly thorough job of getting every one of the businesses, small businesses, this is who we're talking about, the downtown businesses, the service sector businesses, the retails, to put them on this website. So we do have over 1,300 businesses listed from throughout the county. Now, if you want to go further, and when Mike went into some of the website, you could see that their website wasn't listed, or their Facebook page wasn't listed, or any of their social media. That's what kind of the next listing is, the next price there for $19.99 a month. You get to be on the website as well as all of your social media and some photos of your business. The option number 3, so we're talking about $600 for the year, gets you all of the 2 stuff, including the YouTube video, and then being featured on the website on a rotating basis. Again, we're doing cooperative advertising here with small businesses, making it pretty affordable, and it's because of the investment that was made in year 1 and 2 to build this. No business is going to build this on their own. And then, of course, the ability to do that kind of cooperative advertising with Time Warner. I mean, it takes a $5,000 purchase in order to, start doing cable and internet advertising with them. But together, we have that amount of money, we can do that together. So, I'm going to leave you with this one here, which is, how do we keep this going? I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the next couple of months here going out and visiting the business sector and trying to get them to buy into this as a way for them to get a lot of exposure for a pretty reasonable price. And I think that I'm going to have some success. I mean, I've talked to a number of businesses already. But obviously, I believe that Waupaca County, in the form of the elected officials, should play a role in this, in keeping this going and trying to further build our tourism sector and to bring more money into our county. The municipalities are still on board. They are at the 12,000 level. They were at 19 to 20 those first 2 years. They're now down to the 12,000 because we want the buy-in, obviously, from the business sector on this project. But I do believe that the county should be a part of this. Now, we're just advertising in the second quarter. Again, the third quarter is pretty good for us, but we have a first quarter, we have a fourth quarter. We could be out there showing who we are to the world and trying to bring more people in here. And just to give you a little idea of what happens other places. My colleague in Waupaca, Marquette in Green Lake County asked me to come to his tourism summit the end of the fall to talk about this project. So I followed Door County, and the closing statement, or one of the closing statements from Door County was they spent $40,000 on drive time ads in the Madison market in August. We spent $40,000 in year 2 on our project. So that's kind of the difference. They bring in $289 million a year. So they're 4 times the size of us. They do have a countywide tourism tax. They have a countywide chamber. I mean, tourism's huge for them, obviously. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, Marquette County brings in the latest was $19.4 million in tourism. And they are in the process of trying to hire the consultant that's been working with us on this, and they told him that their county will be spending $70,000 on tourism. So they're about a quarter of our size as far as the money that they bring in tourism. So I'm not saying that you know, whatever, I'm not telling you a number, I'm just saying that that is the kind of stuff that's out there. I think this is a really important economic development project for us. And again, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I'm totally excited about what we've built here and what we've done here. And I think we have the potential not only to do economic development for tourism here, but community development, workforce development, all tied into this website. Because as you can see from the statistics, this is the medium of the present and the future, and we need to be involved there. So with that, anybody have any questions or any?
David, you know, I saw this in the very beginning, and I had my doubts a little bit, but I think you guys have done a terrific job with it.
Thank you.
And we probably, the county should probably get involved in it. If it's up to me, we would.
Thank you. Thanks, Terry.
Wasn't there something in the paper a couple of weeks ago, Dave, about the city of Waupaca balking a little bit on their municipal contribution? Has that been resolved?
It hasn't been resolved. Mike and I will be there on February 4th to resolve that. I really don't anticipate that they're not going to be a partner. I think that it was just some internal things that is going on, but I don't see them backing out as a partner. They've been a partner for the first 2 years. I expect that they'll continue to be partnered. 1/3 of the tourism money in this county goes to the Waupaca area. So, I mean, if anybody has an interest in bringing more tourists into the county, it's the city of Waupaca.
Any other questions? Mr. Kritzman?
Just a comment. As you well know, we're back as members of the BEC committee, and we're going to be hosting that committee next week here in the courthouse. So they're happy with us.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other questions? If not, I sure want to thank you, Dave and Mike, what a great job you've done with this.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to
Wait for it to shut the.
Next, I'm going to call on Mr. Fleece. He's the chairman of the Highway Committee, and he recently attended the Highway Conference and has a few things he'd like to enlighten us with. Mr. Fleece.
DHA Winter Highway Conference down at the Chula Vista in Wisconsin Dells on Tuesday and Wednesday. One of the first speakers there was the Secretary of Transportation, Mark Gottlieb, gave us a very fine talk, and he also talked about the 3 legs of a stool. The governor wants resolutions from the different counties to keep him abreast of what the needs and wants are of our county. Better understanding by everyone, including the legislatures, and a constitutional amendment which will be coming up November 4th. We hope everybody votes positive on that. And measuring by lean government and innovations, and every day counts. He brought along his Secretary of Finance, Paul Hammond, and he talked about a lot of different things, funding's challenges. The traditional revenue sources are not keeping pace with their needs. Reliance on transfers from other funds and more debt. User fees, that was part of his conversation. Debt financing, state revenue options, increased revenues, rely on general funds, utilizing financing options, toll roads. Brought up toll roads many times, but I don't think anybody sitting in this room will ever see a toll road in Wisconsin. Spending less money, that's also an option. Motor fuel tax. If they increase the tax 1 penny a gallon would bring roughly $33 million to the state. I was kind of surprised at that. Wholesale fuel tax, they talked a lot about that. Registration fees, if they added $1 to the registration, would bring roughly $3 million to the state. Distance-based fees, I don't think our highway or our county board chair would like that. They figure about a penny a mile with all the vans he's got and all the miles he drives. Say you drive 12,000 miles a year, you'd have to send a check to the state for $120. How that all would work, I don't know, but they talked a lot about it. Increase general fund transfers, financing options, again, toll roads, resize our programs to match our revenues. That also was brought up, again. Just considering if you lived in Illinois, and the user fees for one person per year would be $509. If you lived in Iowa, it would be $414. Michigan, $346. Minnesota, $476. In Wisconsin, it's $274. So it's a lot cheaper to live in Wisconsin than any other state. We had a talk from, going back a little bit, NACE and NACO, a young lady, Jennifer Slistic or something, I think her name was, talked about NACE and NACO. We have a president of the state of Wisconsin. I think he's from the county of Barron, I believe it was. And they're kind of to get into pricing. I know Dean has all the information and he's going to give to Mike, our purchasing agent with the highway department, and try to work with that. There's a gal that said we can send a purchase order to her and she will price it, send it back to us. We can look around locally. If we can do better, fine. Or if we can't, we can get it through NACE and NACO. I know Dick has worked with NACO a little bit on that. And it's for the whole county. And somebody asked about transportation. Do we have to pay transportation? They say no, it's the cost. And whatever the vendor is, they get it to our doorstep at no charge for transportation. So that was good to hear. And like I say, you can work with Dean and Mark and check into that and see if it's going to be good for the county. We had a talk from Greg Thompson from TDA. He talked about what other states are doing in raising their funds for transportation. Wisconsin, they're talking about a 5-cent a gallon gas tax. I don't know if that'll happen, but they're talking about it. A 1 cent a mile distance-based tax. It's also being talked about. Raising the registration. Just an example, Arkansas raised the sales tax 0.5% to pay for bonds for over 10 years. This is all for transportation. Washington, D.C. passed a wholesale fuels tax. Indiana raised their income tax. Maryland indexing for gas tax. And they raised 3% for wholesale fuel tax. Massachusetts raised their gas tax 3%, or 3 cents on a gallon, and also $1 a pack for cigarettes. Texas went for a rainy day fund. Vermont went for a 2% wholesale tax. Virginia, they increased their sales tax and their income tax. State of Washington went for $100 for electric car. They must have a lot of electric cars there. And these are the different things the different states are doing. We also had a talk from a gal from the WDNR on invasive species. Culvert crossing, they're going to have a seminar April 1st to the 3rd of 2014 for culvert crossing placement. And mowing, best practices in mowing, clean the equipment when you're done, clean your boots and shoes, mowing at certain times of the year for the noxious weeds, following the DOT mowing policy. Safety mowing is needed 1 time a year, back slopes every 2 and 3 years. Inventory planning, training planning, and schedule planning. In 2013, they went to the Act 20 for the state of Wisconsin, and that's a different way of doing business. In other words, when up until now, the county had a project, they would just give it to us, we would charge them time and material. Now they want a price before we start. And they're gonna follow that program for over 4 years, evaluate it for over 4 years. In other words, we give them a price for whatever. And we go over, they're still gonna pay us. If we go under, I don't know if they're gonna pay us the bid or how that's gonna work, but if we go over, we're still gonna get paid. And they're gonna watch it very closely to see how the counties work, how it turns out, how our bids are, and after that, I'm not sure what they're gonna do. They got a multi-year project agreement, like if we have to buy a special piece of equipment to use for them, they will give us a multi-year agreement, so to pay off this equipment and keep, like striping and stuff like that. We use, I think, Portage County to stripe our highways and our towns, and if we buy a piece of equipment like that for them, that's what it would work like. Where was I? That's how the state is going to work. Then we got into IOH, implements of husbandry. The ag business in the state is over $50 billion. There's going to be some very changing rapidly. Moving equipment, planting crops, manure transportation, milk transportation. These are the things they're looking at. How can we support agriculture, at the same time investment in our highway infrastructure? There's being a bill circulated now, and there's going to have a hearing on it on January 28th about different things that are coming up, and that bill is the width of the equipment. In other words, if the equipment is going over the center line, they want flashing lights, turn signals, and different things on the back of that equipment so you can certainly see it. The height envelope on that equipment, there's no limit. The length of that equipment, if it's over 60 feet, they don't want them to go over 20 miles an hour. The weight, 23,000 pounds per axle and 92,000 pounds gross. And they would like to have an annual travel route. In other words, let the county, let the town board and things like that know how they're going to transfer their crops, and they're going to have a nominal fee. What that's going to amount to, I'm not sure. Generate conversation with local authorities, town chairmen, farmers, and commissioners. Develop training. Establish standing forum for continually address these issues. Create rural safety awareness campaign for planting and harvesting. Develop education materials for officials and law enforcement. And that was pretty much for that. Going back to this performance-based maintenance, we in Waupaca County do give out a lot of prices. I think it's going to be very simple for us. Last Penny is very good at that, and we're kind of looking forward to it. A lot of counties were grumbling about it. They didn't want to do it, but you're either going to get on the bandwagon or you're going to be lost. They're talking about letting other counties go through. In other words, Portage County could go through Waupaca County as far as plowing. Right now they stop at the county line. But the counties that are going to be productive and get on this, I think are going to have a lot of work. And the final thing is November 4th, we're going to vote on this constitutional amendment. It's going to be very important that they cannot rob the DOT of any of their funds. Whatever funds are in there are going to stay in there. A few years ago they did get robbed, and so this is something that's very important, and I know we'd like to do a little ad in Waupaca County to make people aware of this so everybody knows. They showed the wording of it, and it was fairly upfront and everybody should understand it, but that's where it is. Any questions? Don?
I got two questions actually. One is when they talk about a wholesale tax, are they talking about just on motor fuel or are they talking about all wholesale?
I think it was just motor fuel.
Isn't that still a motor fuel tax. I mean, what difference does it make? It's gonna get passed on to the consumer.
That's exactly right.
And the other question I have is, what's being done to address the electric vehicles?
Nothing yet in Wisconsin that I've heard.
Because they don't contribute toward highway maintenance at all.
Right, nothing yet in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Great report. Of course, I'm on a WCA board and hear Mr. Gottlieb a few times a year, and I echo what Bob just said. And he also mentioned that because many of us drive smaller cars today, use less gas, it's also hurt the transportation fund greatly. And I personally mentioned at the meeting, I think our registration fees are ridiculously cheap. Why did we quit gas tax indexing as we did? And hopefully that'll come back. I'm in the transportation business and I use 6,000 gallons a month. I wouldn't like to see that, but what has to be has to be. And so of course, if we raise it to $100, I would be paying $3,800 more a year in registration fees. But other states are there because I have a 2003 car in Arizona, Prescott, Arizona, and registration fees were $240 some for 2 years there for that old vehicle. I said, what if I bring my 2010 truck? They told me it'd be, I think it was $725 for 2 years. Yeah, they go by the value out there. Sales tax is 8.5% in Prescott, Arizona, so we're getting by pretty cheap here. So, with that being said, I'm not going to give my county chair report. I have nothing. Let's go on to ordinances or amendments to General Code of Ordinance, Chapter 34, Z-001-14, Town of Farmington, RC-N, District 2, and our district, Harry and Verna Owens Trust.
From an RCN, Rural Commercial Neighborhood District, to an RR Rural Residential District to make the zoning district consistent with the current use on the property and existing residential dwelling. Having held public hearings thereon pursuant to Section 5997 Wisconsin statutes, and based on the testimony presented at the public hearing, the committee decided to grant the petition for zoning map amendment due to the following. The Town Board of Farmington approved this amendment, and it is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan.
It's a motion by Supervisor Craig and a second by Supervisor Gerald Murphy. Any discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Next, Clerk Robin has appointments.
The only appointments today are the fire wardens that were listed and sent out to you in the packet. If there are any changes, we need to know that now before we have the chair sign on those.
Do you notice any changes or irregularities? If not, motion for approval. Motion by Supervisor Quistman, a second by Supervisor Handrick. Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0 to approve the appointments.
Announcements and correspondence.
Other than what's listed on your agenda, I just wanted to make note that as requested, the Veteran Service Officer did put a copy of the TAPs on your desk. And also the Waupaca County Shoreland Zoning Ordinance. It was handed out today. It will be reviewed next month's meeting so that you can take this with you to review. And that's all.
And congratulations to Supervisor Craig for being appointed to the Wisconsin County Mutual Investment Advisory Committee. I'll be joining you on there as I am on the board now, and I'm on that committee. And she's also, pardon me? And Fred Zog. She's also been appointed to the WCA Taxation Finance Steering Committee, so very good, people, way to go. With that, I think Mr. Asen made an appointment. Yes, sir, Mr. Fleet.
Just for your information, I was told Sunday that Dewey Brown is in the nursing home at St. Joe's now.
So keep our prayers there for him. There's a motion by Mr. Asen for adjournment and a second by Mr. Zog. Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion Carries 25-0, the meeting's adjourned.
If I could have Mr. Gerald Murphy come to the podium, please, before you leave.